All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So if we look at the syllabus, we talked about professional attire on last Thursday, and then today we're going to talk about the interview process. You know, how to conduct yourself in an interview, how to answer certain types of questions and these type of things. But then notice for the rest of the semester, all we have left are the mock interviews, right? So Thursday, Tuesday, Tuesday, right, on the final. So what I'm going to do is I am going to send you a calendar invite similar to what we've done before that we'll be doing with certain slots before that are during class time. Okay. Um, and what we're going to do, what you need to do is to sign up for a interview. Now this class is an hour and 15 minutes, so I will most likely have 3 interviews on the 30th, the 5th, and the 7th, right? So 3 people in each one. And then the next one should be able to have, let's see, that's an hour and 50. We should be able to have 5 there. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I think that should be able to cover everybody for us to be able to, for everybody to sign up for an interview. If you are just sitting in the class to learn, please don't sign up for an interview because there's limited time spots, right? But if you are registered for the class, you want to have an interview with me during the class. Now the interview will be on Blackboard Collaborate. We'll be doing it virtually. We'll both turn on our cameras and I'll ask you questions and we'll go back and forth, and it's going to be a bit of a role-playing type of interview here. Before the interview, what I'm going to need from you to do is to go into Blackboard and submit to me as an assignment before your interview, what is it that you're interviewing for? So if you're interviewing for a job, what I need you to do is to submit the job description, right? It can be a link or you can copy paste it. If you're interviewing for medical school, I need you to submit a link to the medical school that you're applying to and all the information about that medical school. Same thing goes for dental school, PA school, pharmacy school, graduate school, any of those things. You need to show me where that information is, because I do have to prepare for the interview so that I know what type of questions to ask you. So you can upload that. I'll make an assignment, and then I think the assignment might already be there, and then you can go ahead and upload that information, and it needs to be done before you sign up for a meeting. The meeting is going to be first come, first serve. So when I email the link, you know, if you're the first one to respond, then you get to get the choice of when you want to hold that interview. Okay. All right. So any questions about that interview process before we move on to other things? Any questions? Go ahead, Samuel.
Kind of touching back on what you were just saying, would you want us to submit all that information the day before we have the interview, or?
Um, at least the day before. Please do not do it the day of, because I like to prepare the day before. But the sooner the better. If you already know, I say send it today, right? If you already know. Anybody else? Madula, can you unmute? And Mary, can y'all unmute? I can.
Oh, yeah, my question, because like whatever I am preparing for, like I'm not submitting it for this cycle, for like next year's cycle, so I know I'm not completely qualified, so should I
So
still?
again, yeah, this is just practice, right? So we're going to go practice with what you currently have, right? And here's the thing: you're going to do the best you can with and use with everything that you currently have to go into the position. And then when you get to the real one, you know, that interview obviously would be a lot better. Okay. Mary, did you also have a question?
You wanted me to send you an email, right? Since my camera doesn't work.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Maybe we can do. Maybe we can do it. Hello. Maybe we can do
Sorry.
it through your. It's okay. Maybe we can do it through your phone. Do you have a smartphone?
Yes.
Yeah, you might be able to log on through Blackboard Collaborate through your phone for that interview. So we might
Okay,
be
I'll
able to do
try
it
it.
that way.
I'll try it soon and see if it works.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else? No questions. Everybody excited about the interview? We excited? Everybody, no, iffy. Absolutely not. nervous. You guys will be fine, right? Remember, it's just us. The idea, nobody here is going to be like tearing you apart. We're just going to give you feedback, right? We're going to give you feedback on how you can do better. Here's the thing, guys. You want to make sure that you go through this, because if you go to an interview on the very first part, without a mock interview, if you, let's say you go to one of your graduate school interview or a job interview and you never had a mock interview, the nervousness that you feel right now is going to be during that interview, right? And rather you get that nervousness out of the way now, where it doesn't really count too much, right? And and that way, when you take the real interview, be like, okay, I've done this before. I've been coached, right? I know how to answer some of these questions. I'm good, right? That's the goal here. The goal here is not to freak you out, to make you nervous. The goal is to ultimately teach you and get you ready for these things. I don't want you to be nervous when you're doing the interview for real, right? And you probably will be a little nervous, but I don't want you to be in a freak out mode when you're doing the interview for real, okay? All right, anybody else? Just unmute, guys, because I'm having trouble seeing the chat. They show up for a little bit and then they disappear. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. No, go ahead.
I don't know if you already answered this, but how long are they going to be, like on average?
So in real life, they'll probably be in 30 minutes to an hour. Because of our time restrictions, it's probably going to be about 20 minutes. Okay. Anybody else?
Do you want us to dress up completely?
No, I mean, normally I would if we were face to face, but I mean, I'm not going to ask you to back away from the camera and turn around so we can see everything. No. So we'll just have to neglect that part for now, unfortunately. Yeah. And plus, the other thing is some of you might not have things. You might need to go shopping, and we can't go shopping right now. So, so yeah, let's just we'll just won't worry about the attire for now. Anybody else? Okay, so there's nothing else. Also keep in mind the due assignments, right? So Thursday, you have your personal statement or cover letter rough draft that is due. You should have already submitted your request, or sorry, your request for the letter of recommendation rough draft is due today. Thursday, here's your personal statement or your cover letter rough draft. And then Friday is the final draft of your plan. I think I met with most of you. If you haven't met with me about the research plan, please reach out. I did reach out to some of you by email if we haven't met, okay? But that final draft is due on the 1st, right? So that means that when it comes to the request for letter of recommendation, what most likely I'll do is very similar to what I did to the resume and abstract, is I'll give you feedback and send it to you by email. If you feel that you want to meet with me, we can try to do that. But I really want to spend more time focusing on your personal statement because I would like to meet with y'all on that, which is why I kind of want to reserve some of those meeting times for that. But if you do want a meeting with me for the request, you can reach out to me. I'll put that in your hands. All right, any questions about due assignments? No questions. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about interviewing skills, the do's and don'ts. And here's the thing, guys, have fun with it. I know it's easier said than done when I say have fun with the interview, but I promise you, if you have fun, why is this not working? If you have fun with the interview, your personality is going to show a lot more. And that's what that's what they really want to see, that your personality shows. So here we go. They want to see if you're a good fit for the organization, not only because of your qualifications, but again, because of your personality, right? If it turns out that, they're a very high-strung company, right? Where they're very type A and they micromanage. In other words, they're going to be checking on you every single hour to see what you're doing. And you're like, oh no, I can't work in that. It turns out you're more of a happy-go-lucky person and you like to work on your own. They're going to realize that and realize that it's not a good fit. And that's not a bad thing. In a lot of cases, you might realize that too and be like, no, this company is not for me. The vice versa is also true, right? If they're looking for somebody who is a little bit more independent and that you need a little bit more mentoring, right, which is not a bad thing, then then they're going to go in that direction. So the idea here is to figure out who you are and how would you fit into that company or program. All right. So we already talked about attire last week, so I'm going to pick it up from here. And you need to make sure that you plan on what it is that you're going to be taking to the interview. You should always have extra copies of your resume on some nice paper, right? I'm not talking about like colored paper, but some good quality paper. Have some copies of your resume ready to go. Now, chances are they're going to have your resume already, or if it's something like medical school or a pre-health professional school, a lot of times, I told y'all this last time, that they're doing these blind interviews. Well, they haven't seen your personal statement, they haven't seen your resume, right? Not all schools are doing this, but some schools are. So you should have it ready there in case an opportunity arises where they might need it, right? Like, for example, when I was very early in the career seeking position, I remember one where they said, I can't find your resume. They're showing through the folders. And I said, well, I have a copy right here, and I had it ready for them, right? That tells them that I came prepared. I didn't say, here's my resume, an opportunity to help, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, here's my resume. If they already have it, I would have it ready in case you need it, right? Because they should have already have their resume in front of them. It's good to have a notepad or a professional binder, something to write in and take notes, right? So there's nothing wrong with taking notes of things that you don't forget, right? But I also wouldn't make it to the point where it's distracting from the interview. If the interviewer is spending too much time waiting for you to take notes, right, and having less time with conversation, that's not a good thing. So normally, if I do have something like a notepad, it's either so that I can explain something or I can write something down quickly, but still keep my eye contact with this person and just take notes as I go. Okay, go ahead, Dallas.
Can you provide an example like when you would take notes during an interview?
Okay, so for example, when I was in graduate school, right? When I was applying for graduate school, I interviewed with 4 different professors. And in each one of these, they start off with the typical questions. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Why did you pick UT Southwestern Medical Center? And then they say, well, what kind of research are you interested in, right? And then they start to discuss their own research, right? Well, if they're trying to discuss their own research, maybe I want to take notes about their research, right? Or when I discuss my own research, especially in chemistry, being able to draw these things and open up my notepad and show them. Yes, so I did the synthesis of beta lactams. I was able to show the structures, right? So and those type of explanations, right? Now, with that said, if you don't need it, don't take the notes, right? If you can keep this in mind, then don't take the notes because it might come off as, wow, this person has to write everything down, right? I would only have it there ready in case it's a lot of information that you're trying to keep sorted. Okay. Does that answer your question, Dallas?
Yes, thank you.
So you should also have a list of references. Now, again, for a job interview, again, they should already have references because you would have submitted that before the interview. If not, you should already have it, right? So if they ask for it, it's just like, okay, well, do you have any references? You go, sure, and you have a list of the references that you're able to provide. When it comes to graduate school, medical school, dental school, the pharmacy school, PA school, these things, they won't ask you to have your letters of recommendation on already. You would have already submitted those, so that wouldn't really apply to you all. A portfolio with samples of your work. So this is really important too, especially for those of you that are going to graduate school, right? When I was interviewing at UT Southwestern, I went with my portfolio and I had PowerPoint slides of presentations I've done in my research, just in case somebody asked me that, if you had, tell me a little bit about your research, and I needed some visuals, right? And so I would bring it out and say like, well, this is, some data that I collected, and here's a graph showing this to show that I was familiar with my research and I was able to explain it, right, in my portfolio. But here's the other thing, and especially for my chemists, of those of you that want to go to graduate school in chemistry, and maybe even so for any other science field, if you have done undergraduate research, you should be very prepared to speak about it to the point where you're teaching it, right? I'll tell you one thing. So one of my interviewers that I interviewed at UT Southwestern, he was so charismatic. He seemed like such a cool guy. Later to find out that he wasn't a cool guy, and I'm glad that I didn't join his lab. I still joined UT Southwestern, but he wasn't that cool after all. But I remember he said, "So tell me a little bit about your research." I said, "Oh, well, I synthesize anti-cancer beta-lactams. I use the Schrodinger reaction to do this, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "No, no, 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 no." He's like, "Go to the board," because he had a whiteboard in his office, "and tell me about your research." And I was like, "Oh, he's for real. Like, I need to go to the board and draw structures and present." So I was like, "Oh," so I'm all there freaking out, but I went through it, right? I went through it and was able to explain it on the board, right? Um, so so you want to bring samples of your work, because in some cases maybe they don't have a board, or in a lot of cases I'd be a lot more comfortable working off my slides than having to pull it from memory, right? So think about those type of things. All right. Research the organization, right? Um, Wherever you're applying to, you should know that organization very well, because this is going to help you answer questions that'll make you stand out from other applicants that are less prepared, right? So you should go online and look at their website, look at their program, know who works there, so let's do one at a time. Let's say that you're going to graduate school. Well, and let's say you decide to apply to UT Southwestern, you're going to interview at UT Southwestern Medical Center. Well, I would have definitely gone onto their website and see, well, what are they most known for? Well, currently they have 4 Nobel laureates that are at UT Southwestern Medical Center. When I was applying, they were ranked 1 in biochemistry in the nation, right? So, these type of things, right? Know their mission statements, right? Be able to recite it um, by memory, right? That is it's not uncommon for them to say, "Hey, by the way, what's our mission statement?" And if you can recite it by memory, they will know that you have prepared for this, right? That you know about the organization. Um, um, if you're thinking about a job, right? If you're thinking about a job here, know what it is that that company does as far as the services they provide, right? What kind of people do they serve? What's their client base? What type of products do they sell? If that is what we're going into, right? Do as much research about the organization as you can, right? Know who is the president of the organization and the hierarchy, right? After the president, who is it? Is it the provost, or is it, know these type of things. I would also read, especially for those of you that are going into jobs. Let's say that you're going to interview at Southwest Research Institute for a chemistry position, right? As a chemist in a laboratory, I would go and look at the news and see realize that recently they came out with an article where they were going to help NASA with a new device to put something on Mars, right? So knowing this to show that you've been following the um, the the organization will really make you stand out from other applicants. Okay. Um, were there any questions? I feel like something popped up on my screen. I'm on my iPad, guys, so it's a little harder. I feel like something popped up on my screen. Maybe not. All right. So the other thing that you want to also do is know the person who's interviewing you, right? Their research and their education and their title. If you get pulled into an interview, most likely what they're going to do is give you an agenda, and you'll probably be meeting with multiple people. Know who you are meeting with, right? I'll give you 2 stories. One of them was me, and the other is when I was interviewing somebody. So when I was interviewing people for the dean position of our college, right? I was on that interviewing panel, and we were doing a Skype interview with multiple applicants. There was one particular applicant who, for me, stood out above all the rest. And with this person, he said, I said hello. And then before I even got to introduce myself, he said, "Hi, Dr. Hector Aguilar, how are you?" And I'm like, whoa, he already knew who I was, right? And there were 10 other people on this interview panel, which means that he went and found my picture and committed my face to memory so he knew who I was. And then he said, before you get started, I want to congratulate, because I had just won the Regents Award in teaching for the UT system. He said, I want to congratulate you. I see that you recently won the Regents Award. Awesome. I hope that if I get selected, that you'll be able to help me out with the student learning aspect. I was like, okay, yeah, this guy, he's a polished interviewer, right? He knows exactly what he needs to do. And for me, for somebody who's teaching interviewing skills, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's polished. He's trained. He knows exactly what to do. And it makes him, and this is a good thing, right? It makes him show experience, right? Now, so that's one story. Here's another story about when I was a grad student interviewing, right? So remember that faculty member that I told you was very charismatic, that he told me to go to the board and explain my research, right? Well, here's the thing. I interviewed with 4 different faculty members when I was going to UT Southwestern Medical Center, and you bet that I went and I looked at all of them. I went to go see, okay, what's their area of expertise? What papers did they recently publish? I read those papers. I wasn't gonna miss a beat. I was gonna learn about these people, right? So one of them, this person, Dr. Phil Barron, that's who I was interviewing with. He said, after I was done my research, he said, oh, that's really interesting. He said, let me show you something else. So he went to the board and he drew out this huge complex molecule, like this total synthesis big molecule. And he says, do you know what this molecule is? And I said, that's diazonamide A. And he says, how do you know that? He said, I told him, well, I've read your research. I've read your articles, and I know that you synthesized that last year, right? And right off the bat, he's like, huh, okay. So he's done the research, right? So this is what we mean by know the person that's interviewing you. When you walk in the door, right, rather than saying hello, say hello, Dr. So-and-so, right? And also know their title. I don't know how many people who have said, I've had, students who I've interviewed for the university who have said, hi, Mr. Aguilar. I was like, okay, they're young, right? They don't know yet. Okay, right? And I said, hi. And then I carry on, right? And somehow try to settle in there that my title is Dr. Aguilar. But one thing that I don't accept is when they say, hi, Hector. Ooh, they just took my PhD, right? I said, I think you mean Dr. Aguilar. At that point, I will correct, right? So you want to make sure that you use the title, right? All right. Being sure that you have questions to ask, right? So prepare a list of questions that you are going to have about the position or maybe about the university, right? Have questions ready to ask, because one thing that you don't want to do is the last question they're going to ask you is, do you have any questions for us? Or do you have any questions for me? And if you say no, then that right off the bat tells us that 1, you're not that interested, or 2, you didn't research enough that you didn't have some questions, right? So you want to make sure that you have some questions ready to ask. All right, any questions about this before I move on to the next slide? I want to give you plenty of time to ask questions. All right, so then let's go to the next one. So compare your skills and qualifications to the job requirements. So this is particularly for those that are looking for a job employment position, right? Make sure that you know that job description like the back of your hand, right? Some of you shared your job descriptions with me when we were going over resumes, right? Yeah, you share that with me, know it like the back of your hand, because remember, the first interview was the paper, was the resume, cover letter, and everything. The second interview is in person, right? Or in a lot of cases these days will be online. So this is the part where you start highlighting your skills and then realizing which ones fit to that job description, right? So you want to make sure those go hand in hand. Also know the hierarchy of the organization. Sure, maybe you're not interviewing with the president, right? But you should at least know their name, right? You should know their name. So like, for example, if you'd go to Southwest Research Institute, you'd realize that the chairman or the president of the institute his last name is Hamilton, right? So, and then you'd realize that the next person in charge, what their name is, and so forth, right? It's as if I were to go to, let's say that I was interviewing for a position at UTSA as a professor, and then they say, okay, well, who's our president? I'd be like, I don't know. I know who you are. I don't know who your president is. Really? I don't know who Dr. Taylor Amy is, right? I don't know that the provost is Kimberly Espy, right? I should show that I know, who are the hierarchy of these positions here, right? Um, look at the qualifications that are in the job description and compare them to your own, right? So look at them side by side and make sure that you have those ingrained in your memory so that you can bring those to the forefront during the interview. All right. So here's the thing. You want to make sure that you're preparing, that you're not thinking about these questions for the first time. You don't want to do these things on the fly. I realize that some of us feel, and I am one of them, I say, I do things a lot better on the fly. And I'm like, I learned the hard way that I actually do a lot of things better when I prepare. I mean, it's okay to be able to, it's useful to have that skill that when you do, that you can kind of answer questions eloquently, even on the fly, but there's not a substitute for preparing for some questions. And you realize that there are some typical questions that you're going to get. And on this slide are here some of the most common questions that you're going to get, but it doesn't mean that they are the only questions you're going to get. So depending on what you tell me you're applying for, I will change and gear my questions to what you're applying to. So, but here are some common questions. Typically, the very first question you'll get is, so tell me a little bit about yourself, right? Well, then, so you have to ask yourself, well, if you're getting that question for the first time, you ask yourself, okay, well, I don't know. Well, I'm a Scorpio. No, that's not what they're talking about, right? They're talking about talk a little bit about your educational background, your personality, your professional interests, your career goals, right? These type of things, right? So set up a story for them. Remember, tell them a story, letting them know who you are, and what do you think are some significant portions of that. And then also play to your strengths. If they're looking for a certain type of person, play to that, right? Play to that and highlight that. What do I mean? Well, when right now there's a huge movement to get minority students into science, right? Whether it be graduate school, pre-health professional school, there's a big movement for this, right? So if I was lucky enough to get into the interview, well then, and they said, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, what I would say is, I said, well, um, I, I graduated from UT Pan Am in Edinburgh last year with my bachelor's degree in biology. I was very proud of this. I am a first generation student. I was very proud of the accomplishment. I think both my parents were even probably more proud than I was, considering that neither one of my parents graduated high school. My dad is from Honduras, my mom's from Mexico, so this was a big accomplishment for us uh, as a whole. What did I just say? I started off with my education and I brought in the fact that I am a minority, that I'm first gen, right? And appealed to that aspect of the position, right? So think about these things, right? You're kind of, but you want to make sure that you bring it into an aspect that kind of all ties together, all right? And that was just a brief synopsis. I didn't even get into my personality. I didn't even get into professional interest. So you want to think about these questions here and have something ready to go when they ask you that very simple question. Tell me about yourself. Now, the other thing here is, why this school, right? So this is going to be a very common question. Why are you picking UT Southwestern Medical Center, right? Why are you picking Dell Medical Center? Well, you need to be ready for those, right? In a lot of cases, for UT South, well, I realize that you guys you ranked right now, that UT Southwestern is ranked right now number 1 in biochemistry. You guys have 4 Nobel laureates, and I can see the amount of publications that many of them have with graduate students. And I feel like this is going to be the place that's going to be best prepare me for my ultimate career goals, because I want to be a professor actively doing research, these type of thing, right? So you want to make sure that this is the part of the question that allows you to demonstrate to the person who's interviewing you, you've done your research about the school, you've done your research about the program, right? And so forth. What do you think are the biggest challenges in the field? So this is huge, right? This is a huge question because it shows that you don't only know the institute, but you know the field in general. And this can go across for those of you that are going to pre-health professional school or graduate school, right? For me, they said, the question they gave me was, it wasn't exactly that, but it was like, if you had to pick any research that was done in the past 5 years that you wish you were a part of, which one would it have been, right? So that's a very common question. Or they could have asked me, what do you think are the biggest challenges in chemistry right now, right? Or what do you think is the biggest problem in healthcare right now? What do you think is the biggest challenges in dental care right now, right? So these type of things. So know the field, right? And know how to, and think about your answer to those type of questions. What do you consider your strengths and weaknesses? So this is a part where you need to really consider and do some self-reflection here on what you consider to be your strengths and your weaknesses. Go ahead, Alan.
How would you respond if they ask you, for example, I've heard this question before of would you have, like for medical schools, where they ask the students, like, would you have pulled the plug on Terry Schiavo? And what if the student is not like very informed about that case, so they don't have the knowledge?
Gotcha. So, good question. So especially with medical school, and I'm going to give you, for those of you that are going to any of the pre-health professions. So, Alan, I don't know if you know, but these are called Casper questions. These are very popular. They've been more popular within the past 5 years. That students are getting asked Casper questions, in which they put you in a certain situation, scenario, and they ask to see what would you have done in this scenario, and to get insight in personality. And honestly, when I first was learning about Casper questions, I'll be perfectly honest with you guys, I thought, this is a joke, this is ridiculous, I'm not going to learn anything from this. So then I went to a training seminar, and I saw it done in real time. I saw it done, and I was like, oh wow, you really can learn a lot from a person. And what happens is they ask you the question in such a way that you're gonna answer honestly, and without knowing, reveal something about your personality, right? So so let me give you an example. Andrew, I see your hand. I'll let you ask it in a few minutes. Let me give an example about this Casper question here. So the Casper question that I saw that was so enlightening was, they gave a scenario. They said, okay, and maybe one of you wants to respond, and then we can for those of you that want to go to medical school, maybe one of you wants to respond, and we can have a little fun with this, and we can try to interpret your personality here. So let's say that you and your best friend, right? You and your best friend are applying to the same medical school. And hypothetically, you guys are exactly everything. He's your best friend since childhood, and you guys are exactly the same. Your GPA are exactly the same score. Your MCAT score are exactly the same. Your volunteer experience, shadowing hours, your certifications, everything is exactly the same. Why should they take you and not your friend? Anybody want to give it a shot? Samuel, go for it.
I just have a quick question for this. So it's everything educational and hour-wise is the same, correct?
Yeah, all the qualifications, the resume, yeah, everything's the same.
Okay. Well then I'd say the school should consider accepting my application over my friends, simply because I have a higher experience with different cultures with my background in being overseas for about a decade. So I've been able to learn different cultures and I've been able to really dive into them. And as a result, I'm able to communicate with people and be more sensitive to the respective cultures and other traditions they may or may not have.
Okay, cool. Anybody else want to give an answer to this question? Nobody wants to practice? This is the fun part. Give it a shot. All right, well, okay, so we'll be ready for these type of questions. So if I was interpreting Samuel's question answer here, what I hear is that he considers himself to have an advantage over his friend because of his diverse background. So in some aspect, one can interpret this as because of his diverse background and his exposure to different cultures, he's better than his friend, right? His best friend that he's known since childhood, right? Does anybody want to, I'm going to give a person another opportunity if anybody wants to try to answer that question, especially my pre-health professions. Anybody want to give a shot? Crickets. Okay. So, but now, so let me tell you what the person said something to the effect of, well, honestly, I think would strongly consider my application mainly because of my personality. I think you'll realize that I can interact with people a lot better. I have a lot better social skills, right? And these type of things. Well, what did that applicant just do? They just threw their friend under the bus, right? They literally just threw their friend under the bus. So what did that convey to the reader? This is their friend of childhood years, and they threw him under the bus, which means that the loyalty is really not there, right? Compared to the other applicant who said, honestly, I hope you would take us both, and start laughing, right? She started laughing. She goes, I would hope that you would take us both because my friend is fantastic. She's amazing. And you're absolutely right. She would definitely fit very well in here. I would like to point out that so do I. And I think if we're both taken in together, we'd be a force to reckon with. But what does that tell the person? Anybody want to interpret that answer? Can y'all hear me? Amanda says team player, right? Yes, right? So this is showing loyalty, right? It's showing loyalty. It's also has the personality come out that that she cares very much for her good friend, and laughing, right? She's showing her personality, showing that she thinks very highly of her friend, that she thinks is a great candidate, but she also thinks that she is too. She's not dismaying that, right? Israel, do you want to give us some comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, like, I haven't been exposed to those types of questions, so it kind of threw me for a loop with those. But I guess that it just shows that that other person is like super loyal and that he actually cares for the other person as well. It
Yeah.
just I don't know if I were to pick one, I'd probably pick the one that said the other person is awesome as well, and they should take both of them if you had to choose between one or the other.
Yeah. Right, and here's the thing, and you're exactly right, Israel. These questions, this training of questions have only come out within the past 5 to 10 years that they've started to ask the pre-health professions. And when I went through this seminar, I was initially thinking this is a joke and like you're not going to learn much. And then as they kept going through, I was like, oh wow, you really do learn a lot, because students have learned interviewing skills to the point where they know how to respond. I'm a dedicated person. I'm a passionate person. I'm a loyal person. But the moment you ask them to respond to a hypothetical situation, they're not going to be able to tell you, oh, I'm a loyal, I'm so and so. They're going to see how you respond and then make that decision for themselves, right? So these questions are really useful. So for those of you that are going for the pre-health profession and will be doing an interview with me, you will be getting a question like this. And so, Alan, the question that you had mentioned, would you have done this? Would you have pulled the plug on Shibo? This is similar to a Casper question, right? And the way you answer this is really, really intricate, and you want to make sure that you answer it in a point that one shows who you truly are, right? But that's also honest, okay? Andrew, I didn't forget about you. You had your hand raised. Do you want to give it? Do you want to have a question?
Oh, I was just going to say that all medical schools and DO schools require you to take the Casper test to see how you are, like how socially and psychologically capable you are as a person as you apply to medical school.
Yeah. So there's a written portion, this is true, but there's also the interview portion, which they'll give you a live type of question here. So yeah, you should be ready for both. Okay. Um, let's see, where was I? Biggest challenges in the field. What do you consider your strengths and weaknesses? Yeah, and then be ready to discuss your strengths and weaknesses. These are very common questions, especially for employment. But what do you consider your strengths and weaknesses, right? And be careful how you answer this, because this will also give some insight into who you are, right? So for example, if you start off with, so what are your strengths? Well, I'm really, really smart. Like, I'm very intelligent. Everybody has always told me that I'm like the smartest in the class. So I can really absorb that information very quickly. What does that tell an interviewer? Anybody? Amanda, self-absorbed, right? Self-absorbed, yeah. Okay, so now, so rather than saying, well, I have a strong, very hard work ethic. I work very hard to accomplish my goals. um, this is a little bit more humbling, right? Compared to now the strengths are typically easy though. You can string your strengths. You guys know your strengths, but the weaknesses can be difficult. And what you need to do is pick a weakness, and which you can call, what I say is flip the spin, right? In other words, you identify a weakness, but that when you explain the weakness, it gives the interviewer insight into an aspect of your personality that is positive, right? So again, flip the spin. You give an honest weakness, but you give them also insight into an aspect of your personality that is positive. For example, when people talk about my weakness, then they ask me, so what's your weakness? I always say, my biggest weakness is advertising myself. This is, what do you mean? Well, a lot of cases, there have been instances that I work on projects, and I work very hard on projects, but I don't always get the credit that I deserve for the projects, because I'm more concerned with the overall goal of the project. And then somebody can sometimes, speak to it a little bit more, or takes the more of the forefront approach to present the project. So I'm not always given that credit. And when it comes to being able to put myself out there and advertise my accomplishments, I come from a family with a Latina mom that, we were always taught that we get A's in class because we're supposed to get A's, not because we deserve an award, not because we deserve praise. So taking that type of praise and that forefront knowledge has always been challenging me, but I am working on it. I'm definitely working on it. I realize that being able to advertise yourself and sell yourself is a skill that we all need. So I know this is my weakness, and this is progress in the making. What did I just say? Anybody? What did you hear? What's going on, guys? You guys are so quiet.
At the end, that kind of sounded like a good thing rather than a bad thing.
True. Yeah, good. Anything else? How many people are in this room? Everybody's here. Go ahead, Andrew.
It kind of sounded like you were like, basically, I'm really bad at taking the credit. It's kind of what I kind of read it as, like you're good at staying in your zone and focus more on the goal more than me, more like us. It's kind of how I interpreted it.
Right. So good. So I think what ultimately we're trying to do here is, one, was able to show that I'm a team player, where the end goal is more important than than who gets credit, right? It's hopefully showing some the person is humble, And then by bringing in a story about my Latina mom and what we're used to, it adds personality, right? Where is this rooted from, right? It adds personality, and hopefully they remember, especially if they can relate to it, right? If they can relate to it and be like, yeah, my mom was like that, they're going to remember you, right? They're going to remember you. So you want to do these type of things here. Flip the spin when it comes to your weaknesses. Give an example that show how you have worked into group to solve a problem. Right? You need to think about this because it's interesting, especially for those of you that are going into an employment type of interview. This is a huge question. How have you worked in a team to solve a problem? Because when I have asked recruiters from Valero and Southwest Research Institute and DPT Laboratories, I asked them, what do y'all look for in a applicant? They tell me three things. One, the way they communicate, both verbally and written. So how can they present, right? And then how can they write? And the other thing is, how do they work as a team? Can they work as a team? Right? That's the biggest thing. I wish I could tell you that they wanted the person who has a 4.0. I wish I could tell you they want the person who knows organic chemistry like the back of the hand. But those are the things that they're really looking for, right? Because a lot of the other stuff they can teach you on the job, right? Now, obviously, if you come in with that and these skills, you're much more of a viable applicant. But you need to have some examples already in your head of how you've worked as a team, how you've had a problem or an obstacle, and how you were able to solve it, right? These type of questions. So the other things, the last question, you can already program this, that the last question is going to be, do you have any questions for me? And you need to be ready to ask some questions, right? Do not go through and just say, nope, I'm good, right? No, you should have some questions ready to ask, all right? Okay. Now, here's the other thing about an interview here. When it comes to the interview, at least a face-to-face interview, half of the interview is nonverbal. What do I mean by this? Yes, they're listening to your responses, but they're also looking at your movements, right? Your body language. So when we think about those type of interview questions, yes, your answers are important, but they're also going to be looking at your body language, right? So you need to be mindful of these nonverbal communications that actually can speak volumes to the type of person you are and your personality, okay? So with that said, also keep in mind that this slide says that your interview starts when you're in the waiting room. I take this even farther and I say that your interview starts the moment you leave your house. Why do I say this? Because how you behave is going to dictate your personality and how you perceived. What do I mean? Well, I know of a friend who was running late. Well, not late, but they're always that type of person who has to be 20 minutes ahead, 20 minutes early, which is a great feature. But they were so adamant of being the 20 minutes early that they had pulled into the parking lot of where they were going to apply or have their interview, and somebody had their blinker on and for that spot, but there were no other spots that were close enough to the building, so they pulled right in, right, and then just walked away, realizing that the other person already had the blinker on, that spot belonged to them, right? So then they go and they were 20 minutes early, which is great, right? And then they go into the interview, and the person interviewing them was the person he took the spot from, right? So this already says a lot about your personality without this person ever even having to ask a single question, right? So be mindful of that. The other thing is, yes, in waiting rooms, if you're asked to wait, how you behave there. If you're, if you're just walking around pacing, that shows that you're anxious or nervous. Or if you're having a conversation with somebody who's loud and it's loud and disrespectful, right? You want to make sure that you're I want, for the lack of a better word, behaving professionally, okay? The other thing that you want to do is to make sure that you exhibit confidence, right? So there's a lot to say about a smile and how much just smiling can lighten up the mood for people, right? And if for me, I think hopefully you guys realize that I smile a lot, right? I'm always smiling. And the reason why is because it puts students in a better mood when I'm smiling. So if I'm smiling and I say, they're really scared, they don't want to ask a question, and I say, oh, okay, go ahead, ask your question. I have this huge smile showing my teeth and my cheeks are all the way up to my eyes. Go ahead, ask a question. They're going to be a little bit more comfortable asking a question, right? I can also do this. I'm revealing some secrets here, right? When I have to tell a student no, and they have the potential of being upset, so I have to smile, right? And for example, it says, Dr. Elad, I missed the deadline to submit the quiz. Can I submit it, please? And I'll smile and say, I'm so sorry, while I'm still smiling. I'm so sorry, I can't accept the quiz. It wouldn't be fair to the other students, but I'm big smiling, right? And some of you are like, yeah, he's done that to me, right? Why? Because hopefully it softens the blow a little bit, right? It's what he said about body language here. The other thing is eye contact. You want to make sure that you have some good eye contact when you're holding the interview. Now, don't be, and I wish I was in front of you guys because I could tell you exactly, it's not like you can get in their face and open your eyes like bulging and be like looking at them the whole time. No, you want to be casual, make eye contact. It shows confidence here. And it's okay to drift off every now and then, but you always want to come back to the person. But if you're not making eye contact with the person who's interviewing you, what it's suggesting is that you're not being completely honest, right? So you want to think about that. The other thing is the handshake. You want to make sure that you have a firm handshake. Now, don't break their hand. No, just a strong, firm handshake. And don't have a wimpy hand, right? Ladies tend to do a little bit more of like the base of the hand facing out. No, just a firm handshake to show confidence here. The other thing is about your posture, right? When you're conducting the interview, you should be mindful of your posture. If you're completely slouching the whole time, that shows a lack of confidence, right? So make sure you're aware of those type of things. Maybe subtle movements are also can be like if you're constantly tapping your foot or you're tapping on the base of your pant, whatever it may be. This is showing anxiety or anxiousness. So you want to kind of keep those under control. Go ahead, Mary, you have a question.
I shook a judge's hand once, and the way he shook my hand, I was like, it's like assertive, and I don't know, it's just like it's different.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Did it feel like he was going to break your arm off?
No, it felt strong, but not strong enough to where he was gonna break my hand. So.
Okay, because I've had people who give assertive handshakes, and you need to gauge the person who you're shaking the hand, right? If they're like this builder type, then yeah, they probably can handle a more firm handshake than the normal person. But if they're this small little petite young lady, yeah, maybe not as firm as you would do with the muscle builder, right? I've had the issue where people come shake my hand and they shake it so violently that like my whole arm moves. Right? And I'm just like, and these are professionals. I'm like, oh, come on, man. That was like, my arm hurts now, right? So yeah, be cautious of those things. So posture, be attentive, right? So don't stare, but maintain good eye contact when you're addressing different aspects of the interviewing questions, right? So again, you don't want to be like completely staring at them the whole time, but you want to make good eye contact and show thoughtfulness when they're asking you questions. Make sure to respect their space, right? Especially now, 6 feet, right? But no, in general, you don't want to be really up close to anybody. You want to give people their space. I've had people where they come talk to me, they shake their hand, they shake my hand and they're shaking my hand, and as they talk to me, their face is like right in mine. And my instinct is like to back off a little bit, and then they get closer. It's like, whoa, come on. I can talk to you from like 12 feet, 12 inches, right? But it's just respect their space, right? Be careful with your facial expressions, and this is what I call your poker face. So this is what I mean. Some people have very hard times hiding their facial expressions, and like if somebody says something, it's hard for them not to react with either like a squint or like a confused look or like a disgusted look. You need to keep those emotions in check. The other thing is, this is where smiling is important, because some of us, and I have some family members that are like this, that they'll be like, Oye, why, or English, this is, why are you always so upset. Why are you so grumpy? And I was just like, I'm not grumpy. It's like, well, you look at your face, you're grumpy. It's like, this is my face, right? So some people just have that face that they look like they're not happy. So this is where smiling, especially in an interview, would be really helpful, right? Again, don't make it fake, but make it genuine, okay? All right, many interviews end with, do you have any questions? Make sure you have some and bring a list of questions and be strategic. So this might be a part where you have your notepad, right? Maybe you had those questions in your notepad already prepared. Says, yes, I have a few questions. I wrote some down if you don't mind me, just so that I wouldn't, if you don't mind me asking, just so that I wouldn't forget, right? And then you ask questions, right? And here are some examples of some questions, but they should be genuine questions, right? And strategic to try to maybe highlight some of your accomplishments. So for example, in your opinion, what makes this organization a great place to work, right? What do you consider the most important criteria for somebody to be successful in this job, right? What's the most important trait that somebody needs to have to be successful in this job? So what's the culture like here at Southwest Research Institute? There's a lot to be said about organizational culture, right? How is my performance evaluated? Am I evaluated yearly, right? Is it every 6 months? How does this work? Are there any opportunities for advancement? So after I have this chemistry position, is there an opportunity for me to move to the next level, right? What are the next steps in the hiring process? What field of blank do most of your students do after graduation, right? So if you say graduate school, it says, so do most of your students go into academia or research after they get their PhDs, right? Asking questions like this. So be able to have some of these questions ready to go, all right? All right, so that's the last slide here. That's the last slide. Any questions so far? No
So
questions.
from now on, till the end of the semester, it's just going to be mock interviews.
Right. It's just going to be mock interviews. You and I will have an interview over Collaborate through webcam, and everybody will be observing, and then we'll critique your interview at the end. And this should be about 15 to 20 minutes, but realize that your interview in real life will probably be a lot longer than that. Samuel, go ahead.
So I had a quick question regarding the assignment that we have to do for this. So I don't know if it's the same for other pre-health professions, but for like the PA application stuff, there isn't necessarily a tab that says like stuff for the interview. So what would you want us to submit?
So I just want you to submit the school that you would be interviewing at and give me a link to that school and their program and their PA program. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Alan.
Will you be asking us any Casper questions?
Yes. Yeah, if you're pre-health profession, you will definitely count on that. Yep.
Also, are Casper questions similar to the multiple mini interviews that I've seen are being used a lot now in medical school interviews, or are they any different?
They are similar. A lot of the multi-minute interviews, yeah, in a lot of cases, what those will do is like they'll put a scenario on the door before you walk in, and then you have to be able to respond to that scenario. So yes, they are very similar. Anybody else? All right, cool. Oh, so go ahead, Samuel.
Is there anything we need to bring?
Well, not really, considering that we can't really do this face to face. So just make sure that your camera's ready to rock and roll. And what I would suggest for you guys to do is if you're pre-med, go online and Google popular medical school interview questions, right? If you're pre-dent, popular dental school questions, right? Believe me, I know a lot of them already, right? But at least if you do some research and think about some of the questions that you might be asked, you'll have already thought of these answers beforehand. Go ahead, Israel.
So you said that earlier in the slides that you said that we should know who's interviewing us.
Right.
So like in the pre-health schools, sometimes like you walk up and it's a random interviewer. How do we prepare for that?
So in most cases, if you're asked for if you're asked to go on site for an interview, before the interview starts, they're going to give you an agenda, right? And in the agenda, what they will do is they'll tell you, okay, arrive on campus at 8 o'clock, meet with the coordinating board at 9 o'clock, interview with so-and-so at this time. So you probably won't know them until you get that agenda, right? Now, if you don't get the agenda, what I would suggest you do is at least know the people that run the program, right? You know the recruiting officer, right? Know the dean of the medical school, right? These type of things. But in many cases, when you're given your agenda for your meeting, for your interview, they give you the names of the people that will be interviewing you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I had another question. So when you finish interviewing, do you send them an email saying thank you for the interview or something like that?
Oh, follow up. Yes, very good. This is a great question, Andrew. So yes, it's always good to follow up after the interview, right? In fact, when I was interviewing the dean, I've interviewed the dean, I've interviewed the provost, and I've interviewed our chair, right? Our new chair for chemistry that's going to start in August here. And in every single one of those instances, after the interview, they responded. They sent me an email saying, Hector, it was so nice to meet you. I really appreciate our discussion on blank, blank, blank. If I'm selected, I look forward to working with you. Right off the bat, I'm just like, I like this person, right? So when it comes back to my vote, right? If it turns out that the other parts of the interview were good, at least I'll remember who they are, right? Especially if they're the first person that was interviewed and we're interviewing 10 people, right? That will put that person in my brain to be like, oh yes, that was that really nice, respectful person. So good question, Andrew. Anybody else? No, no. All right. So how about this then? If there's questions, so I'm on my iPad here. Does anybody want to do some role playing here? And what we can do is I'll be the person that's being interviewed, and you guys will interview, one person will interview me. We'll both have to turn on our webcams, and then you can go to the slide. I'll put the slide here, right here, right? And then I'll be the interviewing person, and then you guys critique my responses. Okay, and well, let's just do it really. We only have about 10 minutes, so whoever wants to be the person interviewing, let's try to move this a little quickly, like 5 minutes. I know it might be not realistic, but let's give it a shot. Anybody want to volunteer to be the person interviewing me? Israel, okay, go for it. So I'm gonna turn on my camera. I'm gonna have to hold my iPad out because I don't have a stand. Okay. So let me see. Let me try and get. Let me go out here. The light is better over here. Okay, so you see the slide, right, Israel?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see here. All right. So I'm holding this up. When you guys have the interview, you want to be sitting like Israel. Okay. All right. So go ahead. So okay. So actually, let me set the scene really quick. So, and I know we're not in person. So when we do this, well, when you start the interview, make sure that you actually knock on the door. Okay. So if you do this and then wait for them to open the door, do not just walk in. That's first thing, right? Do not just walk in. Knock on the door. Even if the door's open, knock on the door and announce that you're ready, right? And then when they come, what you would say is, hi, Dr. Rodriguez. It's very nice to meet you. And you'd shake their hand with a very firm handshake, okay? And then they're going to ask you to come in. You say, hi, Dr. Rodriguez. It's very nice to meet with you. And then don't sit. And then don't sit down until they ask you to sit down, right? So don't sit down until they ask you to sit down. Now, at the same time, if they're not asking you to sit down and they're already sat and you're just kind of there sitting, like just waiting, if they already sat, go ahead and take the message and take a seat, right? But it'd be better because usually it'd be like, oh, please come in, have a seat. Got it? All right, so that's the thing. Oh, and then the other thing I need to mention, gentlemen, you'll be wearing a coat, right? You'll be wearing a jacket. That jacket should not come off, right? So when you're sitting down for dinner or whatever, that jacket should be on the whole time. What you should realize is that when you're walking, that jacket should be buttoned, but when you sit down, you should unbutton the jacket, right? You should unbutton the jacket. All right, okay, let's go, Israel. So you
Hi.
can start with the first question.
So yeah, could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh, by the way, sorry, Israel. We're doing graduate school here, okay? UT Southwestern Graduate School. Okay?
Okay,
All right, cool.
gotcha.
Sorry.
Okay, could you
Go.
go for it. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas, and then I went to school at UT Pan Am. I was a biology major. I got my degree in biology. I wanted to do that because my mom got really sick when I was younger, and she had cancer. She almost died.
Mhm.
But so that's why I wanted to do biology because I wanted to find a cure for this type of things. Um, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm sorry to hear about your mom. I hope she's doing better, but could you tell me why you wanted to come to UT Southwestern Medical School? I mean, Medical Center?
So I really like doing research in the lab. I know that I got really exposed to the research when I was working for Dr. Bonick, and I want to go to graduate school. And I know that UT Southwestern is a really good school. They have a lot of different professors and a lot of different research projects. And I hear that they're one of the best in the nation.
Gotcha. I see. What do you think is the biggest challenges that are in the field right now?
And as like in chemistry,
Yes, in
um,
chemistry.
um, I think I think it's there's not enough cures and for different diseases, and I think that finding like different drugs for these diseases can be is probably the most difficult thing.
I see. I see. What do you consider your strengths and weaknesses? Could you tell me a
I
little bit
do
about that?
I do really well in school. I do. You can see on my transcripts. I have A's on all my classes, and I'm usually the top of the class. So I'm very smart in that respect. My weaknesses, I don't know. Mm, yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, I'm not really sure. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Gotcha. Okay. Could you give me an example that shows how you have worked in a group to solve a problem?
So there was I was a TA for the Gen Chem 1 labs, and there was a time where there was another TA who I was supposed to be training, and he was doing some a reaction, but he was doing it incorrectly, and he was heating a closed system, which caused it to explode. So I had to tell him to get out of the lab, even though he was a TA, and all the students were kind of surprised and shocked, and they were freaking out, and I kept telling them, they shouldn't do this, that this is dangerous, just so that they know not to make that mistake.
Gotcha. Okay, I see. Did you have any other question? Did you have any questions for me?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I see.
All right, thank you, Israel. I appreciate it. All right,
For sure.
so good interview, you guys. What do you think? Right. Okay. So obviously, this was like the worst, like things not to do. Right. Tell me about yourself. It was all over the place, right? I grew up here. I went to got a degree over here. My mom had cancer. A lot of this time, people will try to fall into the sad story. And remember, don't use a sad story. They're cliches. It's okay if you learn something from it, but focus on something that you learned from, right? I just realized that my camera's still on. Let me turn off my um, so so be cautious. Make sure that tell yourself question flows a little bit better, right? Why the school? My responses were very superficial, right? The great program, a lot of research. It's one of the best. Okay, be a lot more specific, right? What do you find the biggest challenges in the field? Um, drug discovery, finding drugs. Again, this shows being green and more naive, right? What do you consider your strengths and weaknesses? I'm very smart. Oh, and I don't have any weaknesses. Give an example to show how you've worked in a group. I threw that person under the bus, didn't I? I gave a poor example of where it threw that person under the bus. Do you have any questions for me? No, right? We already know that that's not an acceptable answer. All right. Any questions about that bad interview? Questions? All right, Israel, if you don't mind, one more time, let's do it again, okay?
Yes. Okay.
All right, whenever you're
Ready?
ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello. You can take a seat. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh, hi, Dr. Rodriguez. Yeah, sure. I grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas, before going to UT Pan American to get my undergraduate degree in biology. I don't know if you know about UT Pan American. It's in Edinburgh near McAllen. Have you ever been to McAllen, Texas?
I haven't, but I know where you're talking about.
Okay, yeah. So McAllen is very different from here in Dallas, right? McAllen is very rich in the Latino culture. I mean, but if you ever want some good tamales, I definitely recommend a good spot there. But yeah, I spent my 4 years studying biology before getting involved in research in organic chemistry, in which I joined Dr. Bonnick's lab. I really enjoyed the process of organic synthesis, synthesizing molecules for a biological purpose. So it was a very big medicinal chemistry type of lab, and it really allowed me to combine my interest of my undergraduate degree in biology and then my laboratory skills in chemistry. I'll be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't really sure until about a year or a year and a half ago that I wanted to go to graduate school. I was initially thinking about going to nursing school. But I had experience as an EMT for several years and realized that medicine wasn't what I wanted to pursue. So when my professor, Dr. Bonnick, gave me a research opportunity, I fell in love with the lab. And by putting myself in the arena, figured out that this is what I want to do. And I think I was pretty productive in that lab for a year and a half.
I see, I see. Could you tell me why you chose to interview here for Southwestern Medical Center?
Yeah, so a lot of it was geared towards my research interests. As I mentioned, I have a lot of a background in biology, but my passion for research is in organic chemistry. And I know that you all have a specific chemistry track in which we will take our biology courses the first semester, but then go on to an organic chemistry track where we get trained as an organic chemist. And I think that this program would really fit me, considering that I don't have a chemistry degree, but my biology background and my biology knowledge will be able to really help me facilitate through the courses and actually fit into your research program here, considering that most of your research projects, I know that Dr. France runs a project here with neurological stem cell differentiation, but utilizing molecules that they synthesize in the lab to cause that. I also know that Dr. DeBromager is working with different programs or different molecules as a treatment for schizophrenia, and these different types of flavonoid type of molecules. So I think that I would fit very well into this program, and this is why I decided to interview, and I was very happy to be given the opportunity.
I see, I see. What do you think are the biggest challenges that we currently have in the field of chemistry?
Well, I think in chemistry, well, I'll speak for organic chemistry since that's where most of my experience is. I think the biggest obstacle right now is developing green methods. Our chemistry is just not environmentally friendly. And the American Chemical Society right now has a huge field that's just dedicated to developing greener techniques. And although we're very productive as organic chemists, when it comes to drug discovery, polymer chemistry, we're also very wasteful. And I think in these new times here, we have to be much more cautious of the environmental implications. And I think green chemistry is great that we're starting to focus a lot on that, but I do think that that's a challenge, particularly for organic chemistry.
I see.
All right. All right, Israel, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to cut you off because we're out of time.
Yeah, it was going over my head. Some of it was going over my head. I was like, what? Okay.
So thank you, Israel. So what we notice here again is the tell me about yourself is a little bit more polished, right? I went through my background, but gave an insight into my personality, talking about, where I'm from, where I went to school, and so forth. I was much more specific on why that school, even mentioning professors by name and the research that they do, right? And I also showed that I was a lot more knowledgeable about the field and utilizing what I learned in the lab as a potential problem that applies across the whole field, right? Now, I wish I would have had more time to do this interview a little bit longer, but we are out of time. But here's the thing, guys. You guys know that you're going to be doing an interviewing soon. They start on Thursday, so for whoever signs up for those. But I don't expect this to be perfect, all right? In fact, I expect them to be like the very first one I gave you guys, right? You guys have probably never been in a situation where you did interviewing skills. But the idea here is that you do the best you can based off the tips that I give you, and then we give you the feedback, so then when you do the real one, that you're that much better off, okay? Any questions so far? Any questions before I end? No? Okay, I'm really hoping this is helping. You guys are very quiet today, more so than usual, but I really hope this is helping. I hope you're not freaked out about this. Again, this is supposed to be fun. Relax, it's just us. It's just gonna be a little fun, okay? Yes, I know it's freaking you out, no, but you have to learn the skills, and believe me, if you're worried about your grade, don't be worried about your grade. I want you to be focused on just delivering a good interview population, okay? Or interview itself. All right, guys, I wish you the best, and you'll be getting that link from me. Don't forget, sign up for an appointment. You have to sign up for an appointment, okay? All right, bye-bye.